Welcome everyone. My name is Steve Weber. I am the Global MSP Sales Engineer here at Sophos, and today we're going to be discussing the XG Firewall, getting started with basics. Okay guys, so let's start with the Control Center, which is going to be your dashboard. This is going to be the page when you first log in that's going to give you an overview of everything that's happening inside of the XG Firewall. If we have any services that have not yet started on there, any devices that are currently connected, red devices, wireless devices, your CPU and memory utilization, as well as bandwidth and sessions on there. Are you set up in high availability? Are you using the Sophos Firewall Manager or the Sophos Central Firewall Manager? It'll let you know if those are configured inside of here. A couple of key things you want to take a look at when you first get in here is you'll notice on the right-hand side under my user device and insights that these are not currently set up. If you are a Sophos Central endpoint customer, this is probably one of the first steps you are going to want to take is setting up the synchronized security, the heartbeat between the endpoint and the XG firewall. This is also going to allow you to set up that synchronized application control, which is going to give you further insight into the applications being used on your network and traversing the firewall. Another component that people miss quite often is going to be ATP. That's our advanced threat protection. What this is it's looking for any traffic coming from the inside of your network, going out to the internet, attaching to a botnet or a command and control server. So this is something by default you are going to want to configure. By default, it is turned off. So what I would recommend, you can click the little configure option here, or on the left-hand side, you can come into advanced threat protection. Simply come in, enable this, select your policy options on there of what you want to do. It is log only by default. You'll probably want to set that to log and drop. If you have any exemptions on the inside of your network, anything you don't want to be caught in there, or you have any threat exemptions you've seen, maybe there's a false positive, you can add those inside of here as well. So this is a really quick and easy step to adding an additional layer of protection that does not require a lot of configuration. The next component on here is going to be the central synchronization, which will be the tab below. This is where we're going to go in to set up our synchronized security heartbeat. All right, so we'll let this finish here. And apologize, this is a virtual machine running with limited resources. All right, so our advanced threat protection is set up. So if we go into our central synchronization, we're going to see that we have an option to register with Sophos Central. This will require you to set up a unique email address for that customer in their Sophos Central admin console. This does not use your partner login to get into here. Again, we have a whole video dedicated to this. I recommend you go ahead and take a look at that. Here you can actually go in, and we're not going to do this on this one. You can set up that security heartbeat, the synchronized application control, and if you want, we have a brand new central management in the Sophos Central admin as well. You can also enable that as well. So let's go into firewall rules. Let's get into the meat of this and what we're going to get started with here. So you've got a brand new firewall. Out of the box, it's going to come with no rules set up by default unless you've walked through the wizard and told it you want to set up the base outbound rule on the actual setup wizard. If you have skipped that or you just went straight to the end of the wizard, this is what you're going to see inside of your XG firewall. Our XG firewall is quite a bit different than most firewalls. So in a typical firewall, you're going to have a firewall rule, you're going to have a NAT translation or a masquerading rule. These are going to be all in different sections along with your web filtering, your application filtering, your IPS. What we've done on the XG firewall is we've consolidated this into a unified firewall rule. And with that, if we click on the add firewall rules, you'll see that you have two rule options on the XG firewall. You're going to have a user/network rule. This is going to be determined based on whether or not we select we're going to identify the user as soon as they start using any network traffic going across the actual XG firewall rule. Again, a component you'll normally see when you get to like web filtering or application filtering, or a business application rule. A business application rule is going to be anything that is going to be coming from the outside of your network. So think less secure into more secure. So this is where you're going to find your inbound NAT rules. This is where if you're doing email protection, you're going to find your email protection rules inside of there, or if you're using the web server protection on there with the FullGuard license, those web server protection rules are going to be inside of here as well. We are going to set up one of those rules here when we get over to our other firewall as well. To start, we're going to take a look at the user/network rule. Just give you an overview of what's inside of here from this standpoint. First thing to do is going to be set up a name for your rule. So in this one, we're going to do real quick and easy here. It's my LAN to WAN rule. We're going to go through and select the source zone for this. This is going to be coming from my LAN. Now, typically, I would recommend that you go ahead and set up your source networks on there. If you're wanting this to be much more secure, you're going to set up your zone that the traffic is going to be coming from, and then the networks that are going to be allowed to use this in here. For this example, we are just going to use any network coming from the LAN zone. Another feature you're going to have inside of here is going to be this during scheduled time. Now, for a LAN to WAN rule, this is probably not useful, but if we were setting up a wireless rule, we have our wireless traffic coming in, our wireless access points connected through Sophos Central wireless or connected through the XG Firewall, and we wanted to set some time limits. Anything coming from the wireless zone going out to the internet, those maybe only need to be available on a guest network from 8 a.m. till 5 p.m. So we can actually set a scheduled time on there when these firewall rules will no longer work. This is great for setting up again, guest access. Maybe you've got a lunchtime rule that enables on here, so you can have anyone jump on during lunch for guest access and have full access control to everything. So again, useful, and it applies to the actual network layer. Next is going to be setting up the destination zone. Where is this traffic going to be going to? In this case, this is my LAN to WAN rule. We are going to select our WAN zone. Since I do not know where they're going to be going, and I'm not going to be limiting where they're going on the internet, I'm not going to select anything other than the any networks for the destination. And then you will want to go through and select your services. Again, for this test here, we're going to leave this at any, but I would highly recommend any good security posture that you define the outbound services that are going to be used on your firewall. Typically HTTP, HTTPS, possibly DNS if you're not using the DNS server on the XG Firewall to pass that traffic. Where this becomes a user rule over a network rule, right now we are in a network rule. We're only defining traffic based on where is it coming from and where is it going to. Where we add identity to this, so think of the OSI model, we're actually adding on a layer 8 here. This is going to be a matching a known user. So this can come from your Active Directory, this can come from local users on here, this can come from Radius, it really doesn't matter. We're going to say which users are going to be allowed. If you have groups of users, our open user group or any AD groups you have in the system, you can use those here to select those users that are going to be allowed to use this firewall rule. So you can have multiple LAN to WAN rules for different users in your network. And you're going to want to see why we'll want to do that here in just a second. As your last rule in there, you may want to also have show captive portal for unknown users. What this is going to do is allow you to have a page presented to any user on your network. Let's say you have a guest that came in and they connected to your local LAN. Maybe they're not supposed to. We don't know who they are. We want to identify every user that's going to be using the internet on this system. We're going to present them with a captive portal page for any user that's unknown. Or if one of your users got on one of their smartphones, they're going to have to identify themselves first before they're able to get out to the internet. The feature down here at the bottom, the exclude user activity from accounting data. This is only used in certain use cases. Where I've seen this used personally is going to be for executives on the network. Your executives typically don't like to see their names in reports, and typically they'll want to have their name excluded from any reporting data out there. So you can actually set up a rule, have it for your executive group, and exclude them from any user activity reporting in your reports. They'll still be under all of the same restrictions that you have for here, but their name will not show up in any of the reports. It'll simply be the IP address of the computer that they are currently using. So again, good feature to have inside of here, not something you're going to use very often, but has a specific use case. So as we're talking, so normally in a network firewall rule, we would have already set up our firewall rule. We've already determined where the source is and where it is going to. We can actually then start to layer on the additional services inside of the XG Firewall as well. From here, if you're going to be using the web filtering portion, which again, I highly recommend, you'll want to go ahead and set up that, we want to scan the HTTP, you will notice that it automatically checked block Google Quick. If you are using Chrome, you may have noticed, and if you've dealt with any other web filters in the past, and they don't, if before they've had anything to do with Google Quick in there, you may have had HTTP scanning on and noticed that users are still able to bypass your scanning. Part of Google Chrome has this Google Quick protocol, which will actually do a UDP request out to get a website. So instead of going across port 80 or 443, it's using a UDP request to pull in those websites. So by default, we are going to go ahead and block that Google Quick protocol. We want people to go through port 80, port 443, so we can scan that internet content. Since most of the internet is going SSL, I would highly, again, recommend that you set up the decrypt and scan. This allows you to inspect the SSL traffic coming across the XG Firewall. Today, it is going to be just the HTTPS 443 traffic that is inspected. When we get to version 18, we are bringing in a brand new engine that will have full SSL inspection, no matter the protocol. This does require an additional setup on the endpoints. Just like any other SSL inspection firewall out there, you will need to deploy our certificate, so the device CA certificate, to those end user devices. That way they trust the XG Firewall. Essentially what is happening in the SSL inspection is when a user makes a request for a website, they're sending out that request to the XG Firewall. The XG Firewall is the one making the request out to the website and downloading all of that content. It's going to decrypt that content inside of there, scan it, and then re-encrypt it and sign it. It's going to sign it with its own certificate. If our certificate is not deployed out to those workstations, you will get an error on a certificate page asking, do we trust this page, as a certificate does not match the signer. So again, definitely something you could do this through group policies. You can do this through any RMM tools you may have out there. You can also do this manually through the XG user portal if you so wish. The Sandstorm technology on here is quick and easy to set up as well. Simply go ahead and select that we are going to enable the zero-day threats through Sandstorm. This is going to basically detect any attachment that's coming through, not attachment, but any download coming through the XG Firewall. And again, check that against the database of, is it known of what we know that program should be, or if it's a document in that case, send it up to the sandbox, have it scanned before it actually reaches the end user. So we've set up the scanning. We do want to scan things on there. The next thing we need to do is actually set up some policies around that. And again, we don't even leave this firewall rule. Everything is done inside of here. First thing you're going to want to do is set up an intrusion prevention rule. We have some basic ones in here, but I highly recommend if you want to start, you can start with your standard LAN to WAN. We have a LAN to WAN generic and strict. I would highly recommend you go in and create a brand new rule on here. Just go through the settings, modify it for your needs, for your environment. If you don't have any Mac OS machines running inside of there, there's no need to check for any Mac OS preventions on there or any exploits in the environment. So it is really easy matrix on there. You can select it by category. You can do a quick and easy lookup by a term. You can do it by severity. So you can actually go through and fully customize the IPS prevention per firewall rule. You'll notice here that our traffic shaping policy is grayed out. So the XG Firewall does traffic shaping 4 different ways. We do it based on a user's applied policy. So if this is a user rule, it is going to be the user's policy that is applied, and you can set this up on a per user or per group basis. If we go ahead and turn off our matching known users, this will actually change to a traffic shaping policy, which is now going to be a network-based policy. We can go in, we can select the different options we want. We can set a view IP guarantee. We can set a limiting rule, whatever we want to do inside of the environment. The next way we can actually go through and traffic shape is going to be based on the web policy. So the web traffic that is coming across the firewall. So we can limit certain websites such as YouTube, Spotify, Pandora. And same thing on the applications. If they actually had the application for Spotify or Pandora downloaded, you can go in and traffic shape those specific applications. So we give you multiple ways in which you can actually go in and traffic shape those rules on your system. From here, you can actually go into the web policy. So this is where we're going to actually go in and define our web policy for our network. Plenty of default policies in here. You can, again, create your own. We can also, right from here, without having to leave here, take a look at what is the default policy for this. You can see this is currently applying to everyone. So inside of here, inside the rule, we can start to get granular with the web traffic policy. So we can go in and say, all right, we have a specific group of users that we maybe want to give access to social networking. And we want to give them access to social networking because they're HR all the time. Everyone else is going to be blocked on social networking except during lunch hours. During lunch hours, we can go ahead and add time constraints on here and say, this rule is going to only be in effect during these times. So it does allow you to go in here and get pretty granular on what you're going to allow, what you want to have inside of the XG Firewall web filtering rules and the people or groups that you want those to affect. Adding a rule is quick and easy here at the top. If we scroll down, you can also see you have your safe search options, your YouTube restriction levels on there as well, and your Google app allowed domains on there. So if you have any of these, if you have a Google Apps domain, you're wanting to block everything out, but make sure your Google app domain is allowed, you can add that inside of here. Also gives you the option if you wanted to prevent people from downloading rather large files, you can set those restrictions inside of here as well. So we can do the same thing from the application control side of this. I'll open this up real quick. We're not going to dive in this too deep. Basically, you can go ahead and set up your application policies on here. You'll come in and select one of your templates inside of the system. You can create a brand new one and clone one of the existing. We can also go in and edit any of the policies that are currently in here as well. And you'll see this will give you a quick and easy way to add policies. If we click add on here, and this is the same sort of a setup you're going to get with the IPS prevention as well. Category, risk, sort of characteristics. And we also have a smart filter search on here as well. So if you're looking for something very specific, maybe we want to stop people from tending their virtual farms, we can go ahead and do a quick search on there. It's going to pull in our browser-based applications for Farmville and Farmville 2, and we can go ahead and add those into our deny list on this particular application rule. So again, this is all meant to be very quick and easy. This smart filter on here, so let's say Farmville 3 is released. Because we have a smart filter looking for just Farmville, Farmville 3 would automatically be added to this list based on this smart filter. So smart filters are very good. They are also dynamic in the environment as well. So coming to the end of this, a few last things to talk about inside of the firewall rule. And I know we talked about a lot inside of here. This is a lot you can do and a lot you set up inside of the actual XG firewall rule itself. The middle portion here is going to be your synchronized security. This is going to be the minimum heartbeat required for that traffic utilizing this rule. In most cases, you're probably going to want that traffic to be in a good green state, meaning that they are healthy. In some cases, you may not be worried about warnings. Warnings can be anything from potentially unwanted programs, PUAs, or PUPs. Maybe you don't want to be having people locked out of the internet and restricted every time we have a warning on their system. So we're going to accept a yellow requirement on there. The no restriction, pretty self-explanatory. We're not enforcing synchronized security at all. These restrictions will stop them from utilizing those rules. They will be presented a page letting them know that their security standing on the network is not met the required level. So in this case, if they are red, they will not be able to get out to the internet, use any of the features for the LAN to WAN. This one at the bottom here, definitely be careful when utilizing this. This is block clients with no heartbeat. If you have your network highly segmented and we have just endpoints on there, and those endpoints are all going to have Sophos Central endpoint protection on there, so everyone will have a heartbeat, absolutely you can go ahead and utilize this rule. If you have a flat network and you're going to have printers on that network and you're going to have cell phones on that network and any other IoT device or any other device you can think of that does not have the capability of having Sophos endpoint installed on it, they will be blocked. They will be seen as they do not have a heartbeat. So again, use this rule only when you are absolutely positive that you have your network completely segmented. Everything that is currently on that rule that is applying to this LAN to WAN or to this VLAN to WAN is set up with a heartbeat. If they do not have a heartbeat, they will not get out to the internet. Last component on here is going to be assigning the NAT translation, often referred to as masquerading. This is assigning the outbound NAT to there. So as you select a WAN-based destination, you will automatically have this checked in the environment. So you won't have to worry about coming in here and automatically checking that. It's done for you. The outbound address on here will be automatically set up for your WAN address. If you have multiple IP addresses on your WAN and you want them to go out a different IP address, you can come in here, create a new IP address rule for your outbound addresses. Just pick one of your outbound addresses, attach it to here, and away you go. Last component is going to be our WAN link load balancer. So by default, we are going to have two different options set up in the XG Firewall. You will have the WAN link load balancer, which is going to be set up under routing. It allows you to take advantage of having more than one WAN interface. It's not limited to two. You can have as many as you want. You can have two active passive, one as a backup, whichever configuration that you want, and you go through and set that up in there. You can also be very specific, and this is good for your, again, wireless connections. Maybe you have a guest wireless connection out there and you have a secondary internet line that is not being used for much of anything. It's just there as a backup, and maybe we can send our guest traffic out through there. That way they're not taking up any of our primary internet. You'll be able to come through here, and depending on what you've named them, you'll see a primary and a secondary connection on here. I would typically name mine, again, primary, or maybe the internet connection name that they're going to be. And you can select that particular connection, and then you can select the particular backup gateway assigned for that one as well. The DSP markings, so this is not something that you will use often. This is something you will have to contact your ISP in order to have these make any effect whatsoever. This does put the DSP markings on there, which is another form of traffic shaping as the traffic is going out to the internet. If your ISP or your vendor is doing any sort of a traffic shaping, or they'll have traffic dropped on their firewall. If there's too much traffic going out through the firewall and the routing queue gets full, it'll determine which traffic can actually be dropped off and basically have it resend. This would allow you to, if it is supported by there, to classify certain traffic as higher priority for that ISP, so that way they do not drop it out of their routing queues. And again, if you want to log the firewall traffic, that can be done quickly and easily through here. Typically, I don't recommend logging all the firewall traffic unless you are actually troubleshooting, but it really does depend on your requirements. If you have a requirement to log absolutely everything that's going through there, absolutely enable those. So that's a quick overview of setting up the LAN to WAN policy on the system. We'll go ahead and hit save on there. We'll go back to our firewall rule. There's going to be an additional firewall rule that's on here. Before we step over to the next section here, you're going to see this, and this is going to be on every single one of your firewalls. If you are not doing anything with SMTP going through the firewall, I would recommend you go ahead and actually just delete this rule. This rule is in here for the SMTP gateway legacy function, allowing SMTP to flow through the XG firewall. In most cases, you're probably not going to want SMTP traffic just to be able to come from anywhere and go to anywhere on your network or out to the internet. So you can either delete this rule or come in here, and if you want to keep it there for just future reference, go ahead and disable that firewall rule. Okay, so went through an actual XG firewall rule. Pretty, it's not exactly, I would say, easy. It's definitely something you're going to have to learn. It is a lot to change when coming from anything like a SonicWall, a Fortinet, even a Sophos SG firewall, where everything is spread out into multiple locations and into multiple categories. So what I want to do is when we come in here and start talking about some of the advanced features that have been added and some things that have been added in with V17. So I've got a populated XG firewall. From here, you can see I've got quite a few different rules inside of here. I have business rules, which are going to be indicated with this little briefcase. I've got network rules, which are indicated with these little 3 connected dots. And I have user rules that are indicated with a little person. I also have a blocked rule inside here, or a drop rule, that's going to be shown with a network icon, but a red symbol on there. Now, as you add more and more firewalls to this, so I have not a huge amount, but a fair set on here, it's going to get more and more difficult to start managing these firewall rules. So there's a couple of different things you can do to help yourself be able to find out what's going on with the XG Firewall, what rules are in place quicker and easier. The first is going to be the filtering at the top here. Hopefully you've already seen this. If you haven't, this is a component that I use quite often whenever you guys happen to call in and I have to do any sort of a troubleshooting as to what's happening, where's traffic going. This is going to be the first place that I go to find out what rules are actually applying to this traffic. We can select the particular rule type on here. So if you happen to be looking at just my user rules, network rules, business rules in the environment, the source zone. So let's go ahead and take a look. All right, we're going to take a look at any traffic that's coming from our LAN. All right, that's going to go ahead and filter that out. Already a much easier list to manage. And we want to go ahead and filter that one more. I want to say anything going out to the internet. Let me take a look at all of those. So now I'm down to 4 rules. Very quick and easy to manage now. I've got my LAN to WAN selected on here. I can see all the rules inside of that environment that apply to any LAN to WAN traffic. In this case, I've got a staff, students, a default policy, and somebody cloned a default policy on here. It looks like it's exactly the same. So this may be an indication to me, which I may not have noticed in that big long list, that I need to go ahead and clean up this policy rule inside of here. I can see there's currently no traffic on that. There's no traffic on any of my rules because this is not an actual live firewall, but this will be an indication of, is there any traffic going across this particular firewall rule if this firewall was active? If we are unsure about this rule, we want to go ahead and again, just disable it before we take any additional action. Now we can come through and disable that firewall rule. Again, it's going to keep it in there. It's going to simply put a white box and put a line through it letting you know that this firewall rule is currently disabled in the environment. So that's going to be the filters. Filters, again, are very quick and easy to use in order to filter out all of the different components inside of here. The next component is going to be groups. So if you guys haven't seen these are something that got added in with version 17, and we've got a little tweak that was added into them with 17.5. So we can come in, click on any one of our particular firewall rules, and you'll have this group option inside of here. We can go ahead and select new group, and we are going to go ahead and state that this is going to be anything coming from the WAN to the LAN. So any business rules. And if you want it, you can call this business rules. Again, be as descriptive as you want. Make sure that it makes sense to you. The next thing, and this is what got added in with 17.5, is the group matching criteria. So as new rules are added to the XG Firewall, you'll notice, and we'll go through and show you this as soon as we have this set up on here, we can actually go through and set criteria. So we can say anything that's going from the WAN going to our LAN is going to be classified under this rule here. And if I select the right one, we can also select the rule type. So in this case, I'm wanting this to be business application rule. So a business application rule that is coming from the WAN going to my LAN is going to be classified under here. And again, I can change this name to business app rules or whatever I want. And what this is going to do is start allowing us to group these firewall rules together. So it will not go and take access on any of your currently existing firewall rules that are out there. So those you will need to come into, and you'll see you'll have a brand new group inside of here. And it's as easy as clicking on those and adding them into that particular firewall group. And what this is going to do as we're coming through and adding those in, all of our business rules or all of our LAN to WAN rules get consolidated into one easy section on the XG Firewall. If we continue to do this for our LAN to WAN, our DMZ out to the WAN, maybe we have VPN remote access, now you're presented with a list of about 4, maybe 5 different categories that you can then go into. And again, it makes sorting out these rules and finding what is going on, what are they doing, much easier inside of the environment. Now, wanted to go ahead, and we're not going to go ahead and categorize everything inside here. I don't want to have you guys sit through this, but you can already see I'm at a 1 page. I don't have to scroll anymore. I've got all these rules quickly and easily tucked away inside of a LAN to WAN policy. So anything that I'm looking for inside of here, got my nice little blue on there, I can quickly and easily pull those out and see what is going on inside of the system. So let's add a new business rule to the system here. And we're going to go over this quickly. This is going to be, this is something I get asked often is, how do we set up a NAT translation rule coming in? That is not going to be done with your user/network rule. That will be done with a business application rule. So when we first click on this, you are going to see that you're presented with absolutely nothing. The first thing you have to do is select an application template. If you are just doing basic NAT translation from the LAN into your WAN or any other zone from another zone, you want to translate that traffic, NAT translate it, that's going to be your DNAT, full NAT, and load balancing rules. You will see inside of here that this also has your web server protection, your web application firewall rules. It is also going to have your SMTP rule inside of here, as well as if you're doing any POP or IMAP. We also have some custom rules added in here. So if you are doing the web server protection and you need to set up your Exchange Auto Discover, your Outlook Anywhere, and your Exchange General rule, it does require 3 incoming rules for that. You can set those up on here. These are templates with all the components fully fleshed out on there that you need. If you're still using Microsoft Link or Remote Desktop, those features are in here as well. We're going to go ahead and select the DNAT rule. We're just going to do a basic incoming rule on here. And you probably noticed this on the last one, but we did not utilize it as we did not have any groups. So there's always going to be this group option inside of here. You have a position of your rule on here. So positioning of your rules is important. Firewall rules are top down. So you want to make sure that those rules that need to take priority are moved to the top. Again, you can do that inside the XG Firewall as well by simply dragging, and I'll show you that. But the rule group on here is actually set to automatic. Now, I could come through and force that to WAN to LAN, since I know exactly where that is going. But if I leave that at automatic, and maybe you have an admin that's just adding stuff into your system, and we go through and we select that this traffic is going to be coming from the internet, we don't know where this traffic is coming from. So again, we're going to go ahead and select any on here. Now, this is a piece that tends to get overlooked as well, this block client networks. Definitely something I recommend you taking a look at. If you are only doing business inside of North America, you can come through and block out certain continents. So for this particular rule, maybe this is a web server that we have going and we're only doing business inside of North America. I don't care if anyone outside of North America finds our website. I can now go ahead and block out all of those other particular regions on there. So this is useful if you're wanting to go ahead and restrict what IP ranges are going to be allowed to access this particular IP address or this particular translation rule. So at this point, we have our WAN to any. We're going to go ahead and select our destination. Now, the destination on here is going to be the interface that it's going to hit on the XG Firewall. So port B is going to be your first WAN interface. These are not able to be renamed at this point. When we get to version 18, you will be able to rename your interfaces. So you'll be able to call this WAN, WAN 1, WAN 2, whatever the case may be on there. Again, with port A, you'll be able to call that LAN or whatever you want to do in the environment. This one is my WAN. So these are my 2 fake WAN addresses inside of here that I'm going to have this traffic hitting. So we're going to go ahead and select that address. Now, again, this is coming from the outside, and it's going to be hitting this address on the outside of my firewall. The next thing we're going to do is select the services that we're going to want to allow. In this case, I'm going to use HTTPS. This will be a web server that we're going to be allowing into the network. And you see we're still at automatic here. So because this is going to be a WAN, and we're going to then decide where we're going to forward this to. So we decided where is it coming from, where is it hitting on the XG Firewall. The next thing we need to do is determine where is this going to be forwarded to. Once this is actually coming into the environment, we're going to go ahead. If you don't have a host name in here, you can go ahead and create a new one. I'm going to go ahead and select my web server. And if that is mapped to a different port on the inside, you can go ahead and select that as well. And then select the zone for that protected network. In this case, that zone is going to be my LAN. From here, you can actually, if you want, go ahead and select your intrusion prevention. If you want to set up any sort of a reflexive rule, you can do that here. I don't recommend the reflexive rule on here. So these 2 options will be fixed in version 18. The reflexive rule simply comes through and adds an opposite rule from a LAN to WAN traffic on there, which will allow that back out the same port on there. If you use that, that is fine. If your firewall is locked down, just do not use it in conjunction with the rewrite source addresses. So this happens a lot when I see people going through and doing this. They'll select the rewrite source address, and they'll also use the create a reflexive rule. The problem with this is going to be that when you use the rewrite source address, we're going to be rewriting the source address from the WAN. So remember, the source on this is actually going to be what's coming from the WAN. In other words, you're going to be rewriting that and presenting them as your interface default IP address on the inside of your network. So it's going to look like all your traffic hitting your web server on the inside is coming from the XG firewall itself. So again, this is something you do not want to have selected in this case. Again, it does have very specific use cases on there. If you had a double NAT that needed to be set up, maybe you had two like networks you're trying to connect with a VPN, and we are wanting to set traffic up and have that source traffic be intercepted and that source rewritten to a different address, we can then go through and set up a source address mask on there. Again, reflexive rule is simply going to go through and set up a reflexive rule in the firewall saying LAN to WAN and allowing it out on that same IP address that it came in on. Again, your intrusion prevention rule, you can go through, and I wouldn't recommend utilizing any of the defaults on here. Create one that's going to be very specific to your IIS particular policy on here. You can do that very quickly and easily. Create a brand new intrusion prevention rule. You can call this IIS, if I can spell right. And you don't have to select any particular policy in there to clone. You'll notice that'll set up a brand new rule on here. It is going to be a blank rule. You can configure that now, or you can come through later and configure that in the environment. Again, as easy as this is, you guys are watching me do this on the fly. I can type in IIS, go ahead and filter that out for only the signatures that are involving IIS servers. You can see I have 107, making this IPS rule much more neat and clean. I don't have to go and filter through 7,000 different categories when I'm only taking and protecting an IIS server. Now, sorry, we do have to select a rule name on there, and that we are going to select an action on there of dropping those packets. So again, very quickly and easily, we went ahead and set up our IPS policy on there. Traffic shaping probably doesn't need to be put on web policy, but you can do traffic shaping on here as well. Obviously, anything from the WAN out to the customer, we can't guarantee. It's only going to be what's coming into the firewall, going to your network, that we can actually guarantee and shape that traffic on. All right, we'll go ahead and save this. Of course, I need to add a firewall rule for this. We'll call this web server. And as soon as we go ahead and save this, what it's going to do is, because we have that automatic firewall rule in there, this should automatically populate it inside of this WAN to LAN policy. If we go ahead and expand this, you're going to see, because I had it at the top, it is now part of that web server. So as you have admins adding firewall rules to the system, you can have these groups automatically applied to there. This was an overview of the XG Firewall basics. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.